Welcome, everybody, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and founder of Guide to HR. I'm excited to talk about what it is to mean about bringing on admin support. As a founder CEO, you're doing a lot. When is the right time to bring on that extra support from an administrative perspective? And I have Hilani Ellis on the call today with me, and we're going to be talking about the right time and how to get that incorporated as a partnership to you to help you really continue to build your business. So Hilani, great to meet you. Welcome to today's podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's neat to be on this side. I actually have my own podcast for my admin audience, and I'm always interviewing other people. So thank you so much for having me on the show. It is a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. I have lived and breathed executive administration for over 2 decades. I like to joke and let people know that I started before we had the iPhone, before we had Slack, Zoom, Teams, and all these tools that are helping us achieve more in less time. And so thrilled to be here. I'm a specialized headhunter, and I'm in my 8th year of running my company, Exceptional Admins, which we are a nationwide boutique service resource for those administrative hires, as well as consulting to really help scale teams and executives to boost their individual outcome to increase a performance. So I'm here today to talk about the executive administrative career and how leaders who are time starved can actually experience time abundance with this partnership. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And as a founder myself, I know I have experienced the same exact issue. I know I need to bring it on. Everyone tells me I'm going to be super glad I bring on an assistant, and I'll regret. I'll look back and go, why didn't I do it sooner? But it's such a big hurdle. I'd love to hear from you, like what you're seeing, your clients, like what are the hurdles? We all have different ones, but what are the main hurdles you're seeing that are getting us stuck and not actually pulling the trigger and getting us help we need?
Yeah, I've been doing this for 7.5 years, and I also have a background in executive administration. I started, as I mentioned in the intro there. The thing that I find, and with 155 searches, in the history of the company, they all show up with, I don't want to train someone. I'm hesitating doing this hire because it's going to make me more tired. I've had some founders and executives and startups tell me that I don't think I'm busy enough for someone. And then the third one, which I can really feel from them, is I think it makes me look unapproachable and arrogant if I'm early in the stage of my business and to hire that assistant, because there can be some bias that the assistant is the gatekeeper, making the founder, not accessible, especially when it's a small team. And now that we're in this environment of remote, there's not that immediate look down the hall and see the executive, are they off the phone yet? You can't spy on them in a healthy way with the remote teams. So it's those 3 things. And that last one that hits home for many, I don't know how it's going to help me from I'm trying to scale my business, because they also, which is a big thing that many of your listeners will relate to, being a founder turned executive or even adopting the CEO title, they are 2 different things. And some of my startup clients, they experience sort of this out of body energy shift of, wow, I'm not wearing 12 different hats to do all that, because now I have hired an operations person or a full-time CFO. And then in my favorite case, I hired that executive assistant who's really going to transform my trajectory with my ideas and the way that the company is going to be able to scale.
Yeah, I love that. I know for me personally, it was the training. It was also I don't know what I can hand over. What can this person actually do that can take something off of my plate that would actually make an impact? And when it is that hurdle of training, right?
Right.
And in human resources, when you're recruiting, it's that hiring manager, I need you to interview. I don't have the time because I have this empty position, but you need to make the time because you're never going to have the time until you fill the position, right?
That's right.
Kind of that chicken before the egg or egg before
Excellent
the chicken,
point.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I hear also from executives who do come with a persona, whether they've seen it with their peers or they've watched some of the shows. Like Suits is one of my favorites. There's Donna Paulson, the
Oh
character that are
yeah.
executives like,
Everybody needs Donna in their life.
get me a Donna. And I'm like, well, also we need to talk about what you can afford, because Donna's a certain price tag, right? And
Yeah.
then there's the Mad Men perspective of the secretary. And there's a beautiful potpourri and body of different styles in executive administration. And so you mentioned a key thing that comes up often in those initial calls of, let's explore what you think is going on for you and your needs. And let me also be the Google of information to help get you like directly to the answer versus having to get to page 7 of a Google search. They talk about training, like, don't bring me someone I have to train. And I like to challenge that in a way that it's transferring knowledge. And everyone seeks that great cadence where they've anticipated your needs. And I, from the admin lens of my work, will tell the admins, you are there to help them avoid decision fatigue to the best of your ability. And the only way for them to learn how to, be a carbon copy of you is through the transferring of knowledge that happens tremendously in the first 6 months, which if you can't wait, to transfer the drive of information you have to their empty drive of information, then that cadence that you want. I have had repeatedly, I'm very intimate with the onboarding process where I'll check in with everyone, 3 weeks in, and I'll have, consulting calls with the admins. How's it going? We'll give them some tips. And I'll get a message from an executive, which fair. I would have thought we would have been working stronger at this point. It's week 3. I'll say they know how to do the job. They don't know how to do you. And so I'll tell you though, time and time again, I should have done this sooner. I wish I could have like $10,000 for every time I've heard that.
Or even $1, you'd still
even $1.
Rich. Yeah.
And, it comes down to, and I have a philosophy, which is great for your audience. If you wanted to take the time, and this is a takeaway and an action and homework, if you want to label it as such, sit down for 1 week and track, whether it's on your cell phone or preferably paper and pen, the tasks that have been asked of you to handle. But there's a column on the left of an 8.5 by 11 and a column on the right. And on the left, it says on purpose, right? Your best and strongest talents. And then on the right, there's the column for the off purpose, which 20% of everything we do should, quote, pull us away from being on purpose. Even as a business owner myself with a full-time assistant, I'm still doing some of those things because it is my strongest talent, but it's not my regular concentration. And so if you do this audit for you as an executive with ambitious goals that you want to reach, if you see how much on-purpose tasks and off-purpose tasks you're doing because you've really written down, just like for a fitness nutrition, a fitness trainer, they're going to try to help you get, body composition to where you want it. They're going to evaluate sleep. They're going to get the metrics. And so this metrics exercise I give out is, what are you doing that's on purpose that gives you those dopamine rewards? And what is off purpose that doesn't give you the dopamine reward? And you really are then essentially creating the launch into what's the job description or responsibilities I need to get off my plate to the best of my ability, or have someone else's primary and I'm the closer, right? I'm able to finish out that task of off purpose because I am also the business owner. That really helps them with the training. And then because that exercise is available, they start to develop this isn't that bad. Really, I can buy back that time. And I'll tell you, those that have come to me, I've asked, when should we have been talking? And they're very funny. They'll say 3 years ago, yesterday, but we're on the phone now. And they really see the life transformation. And we talk a lot about the founder, but they have a life outside of that, even though they're living and breathing their business. We need to support the individual, the human. And so it's a really great body of work to be able to transform leaders and scale businesses, which creates jobs and helps, create disruption in the industry that they're in, which is amazing. So there's a lot of greatness that comes from it.
Yeah. My simplest exercise that I do, the simpler version of that, if I do agree, you should do that. If you want to take it a little step easier and see if you can get there without that, is this what I should be working on?
Yeah.
Yes or no? If you say no, write it down. What is it
Yeah.
that you're working on that you just called out you shouldn't be spending the time on?
Yeah, that's
It's the
great.
same. Is this moving the needle for my business? As founders and CEOs, we need to be focusing on growing the business. And if that's
Hmm.
not what you're focusing on, then what are you doing? And who can do that instead?
That's
Right.
exactly right.
I found that like a lot of times, especially as I start to build my business, being in core HR, sometimes I can't be creative. So as I started to
Yeah.
build my business, I went down the rabbit hole of Adobe and playing around with graphs. And I thought it was so cool. And then I'm like, whatever, what are you doing? This is not actually going to
Where
build your
should I be?
business.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Yeah.
not how it should be. It was fun. And it was really fun. In that moment of time, I let myself go down that rabbit hole. But in reality, that's not my wheelhouse. That's not my
Yeah.
sweet spot. And that's
Yeah.
not what I should be focusing on.
Hmm.
And finding someone who, is a partner to me. I think that's another key thing we talked about a little bit, right? So, okay, you're talking to someone, maybe even some of these listeners are like, okay, I've been told this so many times. I'm hearing it differently. I do need to look into this. I need to find someone. What is the process about like finding someone through, your realm of business versus going down the rabbit hole of a virtual assistant?
Hmm.
I always say you get what you pay for, right? But sometimes,
Yes. Thank
you
you.
know,
So I didn't have to say it. Uh-huh.
yeah, exactly. You get what you pay for, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's okay that you go the cheaper route, and sometimes that actually is going to hurt you in the long run. And I'd love to get your point of view, in regards to those two differences.
Yeah. So cost conscious, right, is sort of that what's the budget allow? And then there's also, which I'm really big on when I do speaking, that energy expense. I am a firm believer that energy currency is the new wealth. And every time we're pulled into the training or the transferring of knowledge, or the exercise that you and I both offered, there's an energy depletion, but there's also an energy return. So from a cost conscious perspective, I've done some research on the virtual assistant platform, US based, which are great. I firmly believe in Squared Away. It is a military founded
Oh,
business with
nice.
military individuals who are a part of the platform. So that's one I would recommend. I haven't personally worked with them, but I'm a big believer in what they've done for their body of admins, and I believe they are all US based. Um, there is a cost conscious component. So the simplest way to put it is depending on where you're at in your business and that exercise of on and off purpose, or, as you said, should I be doing this? If it's a no, write it down. I like that there's the tracking of what they're supposed to do because that's their job description. So for
Yeah.
the VA component, it is the tactical of delegate and it gets handled. If
Mm-hmm.
you're at a place where you would like some healthy, strategic questioning, well, you're asking me to do A. I'm also hearing, without you saying, dear executive, these other two things will need to be also addressed if you're asking me to do this. That's really the strategic business partner of executive assisting today in 2024, and what will definitely be for the future. And so if you would appreciate that sort of delegate and it gets handled without that volley, then that virtual EA, and there's some, I'm imagining, I haven't talked to every VA in the world. There's some that will question back, like the strategic example I gave, so that they truly execute on the ask, or excuse me, execute beyond the ask of the actual goal that wants to be achieved. And so virtual assisting is a really awesome option. I've had some that you have used out of the country, have used in the country. I currently have a small platform that serves leaders with a few of my admins that I match up with executives who just need a little bit of time every week. And then the permanent placement component, you really know the budget allows for that healthy salary,
Mm-hmm.
meeting the landscape of the economics, whatever that looks like for you and the environment. And that would definitely be a huge return at a certain point. And there is no concrete, if you're here, this is what you need. Because just like no two admins are alike, No two founders are alike. No
Mhm.
two businesses at that startup phase are alike. And so being able to have a really great dialogue with someone such as myself who would bring those unique questions forward to really kind of hone in versus this large band of information. Virtual assisting, I think, is really wonderful. I want to see those executives scale. I want to see those executives take their vision and get it to the next, milestone. So Squared Away is, I'm not actually affiliated with them, just by the way. I recommend them often, and people have said, hey, thanks for the recommendation. It's worked out. And then from a permanent placement perspective, there is a cost component attached to it, which, by the way, the ROI is very high with the right
Yeah,
placement for sure.
sure. Yeah. And so, that's kind of like more what I'm hearing you say is more on the tactical front versus if you're looking for someone who can, yeah, do some of that, but really take it the next level and be your partner and be like, hey, like you said, you're asking me to do XYZ based off of what I know about the business, what I know about you, where we're going. I would recommend that we also take it a step further and do Y. And so that's where the people that you work with come along. Is that correct?
That would be correct. Yeah. Someone that, wants to delegate the tactical stuff, which, for layman's terms, the calendar coordination, the logistics attached to bringing people together, AKA meetings, travel coordination. And a lot of executives still say, well, it's faster for me to just open the United app and book it. That's fine. Giving that over, can also be a savings in some way. So there's this great synergy potential for, especially with the exercise we both offered. Like, what is that list that's off purpose, right? Do you
Mm-hmm.
really dislike PowerPoints? And this assistant has an expertise in there that they get it to 70%. And now there's this really great meeting between you and the assistant of everything. And they've put in the charts from the different departments or the outside resources, and they've helped you put this deck together. And you just got to do the bow, right? You're the closer, right? You got to do the bow and you've got to finalize it. Some people get hung up with communications and writing. Some people have a desire to tell their story on LinkedIn weekly. Who's creating those social posts? If you have a company
Mm-hmm.
of 50, have you adopted a town hall, and who's organizing that and who's bringing life into the fabric of your company? A lot of that gets satisfied and wonderfully achieved through a very passionate administrative individual.
I love that. That's amazing. So, someone who's interested starts thinking about, okay, I need to pull the trigger. What are some of the questions that you would recommend a founder, CEO, someone who's looking for an admin, ask to help them find the right match? And it is kind of like it's a relationship, right? Because you got to find someone that really understands the way you work. Maybe not think the same way, because it would be good to have a different thought perspective, right?
Yeah.
But can actually
Mm-hmm.
work with the way you think. And maybe some other things that I'm not thinking about. So, what are some questions that you would recommend asking as you start to vet out the right person for you?
Yeah. So I'll give a general question and I'll give the two-folded answer. If you want a tactical person, this is what a good answer sounds like. I like to tell executives in their interview, whether it's the first or not, at any point, so this doesn't have to be at the first round, asking the assistant, what do you think our first 30 days looks like?
Ooh.
And if the assistant says, which this is not a bad answer, if the assistant says, well, I would want to see what your needs are and have you decide, how we're going to get started or what we're going to work on first. I like that answer because it's also telling where they're at in the ability to be strategic in navigating a process. What an opposite answer that traditionally my clients are really excited to hear are when an executive says, what does our first 30 days look like? A more strategic assistant would provide something along the lines of this. I'm going to watch how you have been managing yourself. I'm going to be looking at the calendar from the last 3 months and starting to see and identify patterns. I'm also going to notice you met this person, Hilani, once. Why? Do a little bit of time and research on what was the one reason for meeting that person. I'm also going to be asking for 15-minute check-ins with a couple people who need you a lot to understand why they need you, the urgency? Is it true or is it their urgency? And start to create an understanding of the environment I'm joining. And then I would want to sit with you afterwards and cover an information discussion, right? We don't want to create decision fatigue, but we want to create the discussion of, I witnessed this pattern. Do you like that you meet every day at 9 a.m., right? It's the first day of the week, right? And just starting to think about, I'm very big on telling admins, don't tell an executive to change, tell them to evolve. And so with that education, because they're where they're at based on how they operate. And so just like a software update's going to happen for all of our technology, we want them to update to their next best version with some new features. And so a strong strategic assistant would be able to identify how they're going to manage themselves in that first 30 days. And again, both answers are lovely. It depends on what you're looking for. I will say, though, 85% of my audience want that second person I mentioned because there's no decision fatigue in there. There's no additional burden. And then there's also, they're coming in to figure it out. Just like a personal trainer would, let's assess what we've got in front of us and where are we going next? And then there's another 30-day check-in. And then by the 90th day, maybe they're saying, hey, I recommend you take a call with Hilani for 15 minutes on your drive in versus 30 minutes in the office. Boom. Like, wouldn't every executive love someone thinking at that micro level for you? And then because trust has been a building every day, because they're not, a bull in a china shop, which I've got some fun stories about that they didn't use me. They did the search on their own. And unfortunately it fell apart, but they come in and just, they want to change stuff because they want to impress, which I love and I get, but there's also a time, which I like to say that there's a time and place to release the unicorn glitter that you want to share, but we don't want to make it messy, like the invitation that has glitter that falls all over you and you're like, oh, it's really annoying. Yeah. So yeah, I would say the question was, what does the first 30 days look like for us? And I gave the two different answers on both are lovely. You would have to decide which one you want, which traditionally 85% want that strategic thinker that I provided as the second answer.
Well, especially if you are looking at bringing someone on that is going to be at a higher cost, you want that partnership to happen and happen fairly quickly. Yeah, for sure. And so have you ever had customers come in and they are on a VA platform, right? That tactical and is ready to move forward with more of a strategic partnership. What does that look like? And do you find that some people actually do both at the same time?
I actually had a wonderful startup and he brought me on board to help him find that strategic partner. And he had never had an assistant before, second time founder of a tech company. And they decided, the assistant I brought in and the founder, that the assistant needed a VA.
Oh,
so a little bit on the reverse of your question,
yeah.
But I've seen that take shape and it's very tactical. And the exceptional admin that I placed knew exactly how to nurture that virtual tactical assistant. So that really alleviated the founder from having to kind of think about what's that dynamic, right? The EA, the exceptional admin, totally owned that success, which was great. From the reverse side to your question, I have, and I've also seen, which I don't want to point this negative out on the show, but that tainted bad experience with the bad VA. And now they have a bad taste in their mouth that they're just like, I'm never going to do it. And so I get those and I hug them and we talk about the success of what's potential. And the beauty of what I do is not just finding a resume and a body. There's so much education and so much elevation just from also a leadership perspective on how they want to see themselves with this partnership. So they've come, hey, I'm exploring this, the price tag to the point of the conscious really gets them going, right? They want to pay 25% under market because that's what the budget allows. But then what they're getting with the VA isn't working. So a lot of it comes down to is, where do you want to be in 12 months and what's going to help you get there? Just like they're going to think, I shouldn't be in the weeds of the financial duties. I'm going to get a fractional CFO. I was actually at a gathering last night. And I was talking to a woman who owns a nonprofit and she was, sharing her woes with having to find a director. And I said, have you ever thought about a fractional chief of staff? And she just like, I could see the fireworks and synopsis, kicking in her brain. So there's a lot of options. And I think being open to, which by the way, this is opening the door for you to reach higher business success with this hire and doing it in a way that's intentional, highly educated, which being a bit braggadocious here, I'm a great resource for getting to that point of education. And it comes from a place of just like so much reward to see these executives who have these amazing businesses and they want to get to the next level. And not everyone needs an EA, but at some point you absolutely do.
Yeah, I will double down on that as a
Right.
founder myself. When I pulled that trigger, I was like everybody else. And why did I wait so long?
Yeah.
And why didn't
Yeah.
I do this earlier? For me, the biggest lift was the tactical piece. So I do have a VA, but I do
Hmm.
see the merit of what you're saying in regards at some point as my business continues. I've brought on a partner, we're growing it. I could see the value of bringing on more of a business partner,
Yes.
not a tactical admin.
Yeah.
So appreciate your insights into this world. And I hope those that are listening, if you don't have some kind of assistant, really start thinking about what that would look like and pull the trigger sooner rather than later. I promise
Absolutely.
you, you will not regret it.
I
So
concur.
thank you
Absolutely.
everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Hilani, for all the wonderful information and have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.